Hello everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more meaningful stories.
High above the glittering skyline in Veritas Corp's marble and glass penthouse lounge, CEO Ethan Blackwell raised a crystal tumbler and announced, half mocking, "Let's give the maid a turn. Could be fun." His words slicing through boardroom laughter as Danielle Carter, wrapped in a worn custodial uniform, wheeled her cleaning cart aside, approached the ornate chessboard, and, without a flicker of doubt, claimed the black pieces. Ethan's Ivy League bravado opened sharp and showy, but Danielle's fingers moved like echoes of thunder, muscle memory forged in forgotten park tournaments, and piece by piece she dismantled his strategy, until on the 19th move, her rook slammed into his king's final refuge, checkmate, leaving the room hushed, crystal glasses half raised, and the janitor already pushing her cart toward the service elevator. Her calm footsteps, the only sound in a chamber, suddenly emptied of certainty. Sleep never really came for Ethan Blackwell that night. Instead, he sat hunched over his laptop in a penthouse wrapped in silence and shadows, the city lights flickering like doubts against the glass as he tore through search engines, chess forums, tournament archives, anything to uncover who she was. Danielle Carter, the woman who'd checkmated him without blinking, left no digital fingerprint, no LinkedIn, no social media, no mention in modern chess databases. It was like trying to catch smoke. By 3 a.m., eyes bloodshot and knuckles tense, he finally stumbled upon a grainy photo buried in a 2009 Youth Invitational program, the Southside Invitational, where a girl with the same quiet fire in her eyes, the same braid tucked behind her ear, stood beside a rusted trophy. Under the picture, only 2 words, Danielle J. Ethan stared at the name until it blurred, exhaled through his teeth, and closed the screen, shaken not by the loss, but by the feeling that he hadn't just been outplayed. He had been seen, stripped bare on a board he thought he controlled. 2 days later, under the harsh hum of the facility's level lights, Ethan Blackwell stood in a hallway that smelled of bleach and old paint, waiting, uncharacteristically quiet, shoulders taut, stripped of his suit jacket and ego. When Danielle finally appeared, pushing her cart with the same steady grace she'd moved pieces across the board, she didn't flinch at the sight of him. Their eyes met, hers unreadable, his searching. And without preamble, he gestured toward the empty chessboard in the executive lounge upstairs. "Not for show," he said, "just a game." And after a long silence, she nodded, slipping on her gloves before pulling out the chair across from him. No spectators, no smug remarks, just 2 players and the sound of time ticking. The game unfolded like a slow-burn symphony, tension thick but unspoken, and move after move they danced across 64 squares until the board sighed into a quiet draw. She stood first, already sliding her cart toward the door, and as she passed him, she said without turning, "Discipline's easy when everything else is chaos," leaving Ethan staring at the board, not feeling victorious, not defeated, but something stranger, humbled. Each night after, the board waited, silent, expectant, set precisely in the center of the executive lounge, the cold city sprawling beyond the glass, like a map of unspoken ambition. Ethan began leaving a single move before heading home. A knight here, a pawn there, always deliberate, always waiting. When Danielle arrived for her graveyard shift, she'd make her reply without a word, no notes, no acknowledgement, just the soft click of wood against wood. It became ritual, intimate in its quietness, defiant in its persistence. A chess dialogue born in silence between a janitor and a CEO, between power and invisibility. He never saw her make the moves. She never asked why the board stayed out, but the conversation deepened, each opening encounter a coded understanding, each sacrifice a question unspoken. And though the building slept and the world above kept spinning, something in those nightly exchanges, those unspectacular, the unsupervised moments, began to change them both. He played less like a man used to winning, and she moved more like a woman remembering who she used to be. The whispers started like a draft under a closed door, subtle, easy to dismiss, until they gathered into full-blown murmurs that clung to Danielle's every step through the hallways of Veritas. Eyes lingered longer. Conversations stalled when she entered a room, and elevators grew uncomfortably quiet as suits glanced at each other over her shoulders. She'd survived worse. Grief, hunger, broken dreams. But this was different. This was corporate suspicion, polished with civility, but sharpened with class and race, and a fear of what didn't fit. One night, after another quiet draw with Ethan, she packed up faster than usual, avoiding his gaze as she slung her cleaning kit over one shoulder. "You're upset," he said gently, setting his king back into velvet, but she kept moving. "I don't need a babysitter, Mr. Blackwell," she snapped, finally locking eyes with him, the calm gone. "Whatever this is, it's turning into ammunition for people who already think I don't belong here." His jaw clenched, but he said nothing, and the silence between them grew heavy, aching, real. "You might be used to being misunderstood and still winning," she added, voice tight, "but I don't get that luxury." The next morning, she found a note folded beneath the chessboard. "I'll stay out of sight for a while, but I'm still playing, if you are too." And so it continued. Each night, a move left waiting on the board, followed by her silent answer. A game without words, without presence, but still fiercely alive. 4 nights passed in this strange, wordless exchange. Ethan's moves marked by small, folded post-its. Danielle's responses left in quiet defiance, the pieces speaking what their voices would not. But the weight outside their game grew heavier, and one afternoon, HR summoned her to a room that smelled of antiseptic and cold control. Across a pristine white table, a woman in a beige blazer smiled with practiced warmth and said, "We just want to ensure everything remains professional," her tone like porcelain, smooth, breakable, fake. "There have been questions," she added, eyebrows lifting just enough. Danielle, in her uniform and worn-out shoes, replied without blinking, "I clean floors. Sometimes I play chess with the CEO, on his break. After hours. No money, no contracts, just chess." The HR woman nodded too quickly. "You must understand how this appears." Danielle tilted her head, calm and cutting. Appearance is often a luxury of those with titles. And then she stood, no rage, no plea, just grace under fire. "Am I being disciplined?" "No," the woman said, startled. "Then I have work to do," Danielle answered, walking out with her back straighter than ever. That night, she nearly skipped the executive lounge, nearly let someone else mop that floor. But something pulled her there. The board was already mid-game. A bold queen sacrifice sitting dead center like a dare. She blinked, smirked, and played her counter. Before leaving, she scrawled on a post-it of her own, "Nice try, but your diagonal was exposed 3 moves ago." D. 3 days later, the boardroom buzzed with tension as Ethan Blackwell addressed his inner circle. Not with quarterly charts or product rollouts, but with a single-page proposal titled Community Initiatives Directive, outlining a pilot chess and STEM mentorship program in Southside Chicago. Eyebrows rose, confusion rippled, and someone asked, "Is this about the janitor?" Ethan didn't flinch. "It's about correcting what we've ignored," he said flatly, "about proving talent doesn't always wear a tailored badge." The approval passed, barely. And days later, Danielle found herself face-to-face with a woman in a tailored green suit at the rec center who introduced herself as a representative from the Veritas Foundation. "We'd like to support your Saturday program," she said gently, sliding over brochures. "Funding, equipment, transportation. No press, no conditions." Danielle's eyes narrowed, scanning her face for strings. "Does this have anything to do with the man who always plays white?" she asked. The woman only smiled. That night, Danielle entered the executive lounge to find Ethan already waiting. Nervous, standing, hands clasped. She moved a piece, then sat without speaking. "So you're starting the game tonight?" he asked. "I've been letting you lead long enough," she replied coolly. He hesitated, then added, "I had nothing to do with the donation." "Of course you didn't," she said, eyes on the board. "It's not about pride," he murmured. "It's proof," she cut in, "that someone like me can build something without being rescued." He nodded slowly, then offered, "Train with me for the Chicago Open. No coaches, no cameras, just you and me, 5 mornings a week." She paused, fingers hovering above her bishop, then said, "If I win, you stop treating me like a puzzle you need to solve." "And if I win?" he asked. She moved the piece, her eyes still on the board. "Then maybe you'll understand why winning's never been enough." He replaced the crystal board in the executive lounge with a scratched, travel-worn set, the kind used in underfunded community centers. And when Danielle walked in that night, her eyes paused on it, one brow lifting as she asked, "No more ivory and glass?" Ethan shrugged, settling into the chair across from her. "Figured I should play on your terms now." She didn't respond, just pulled her chair in and began the game. From that night forward, the ritual deepened. Dawnless mornings at the cafe near Roosevelt and Wabash, thermoses of weak coffee, chipped ceramic mugs, boards unpolished and real. They played in silence, always 5 a.m., always before the world woke up. He brought books, Nimzowitsch, Polgar, Karpov. But she countered with intuition, instinct shaped in street matches and memory, her moves precise, lean, sharp as blade edges honed by necessity. Between games, something unspoken began to pulse beneath the surface. Mutual respect born not from sentiment, but strategy. One morning, after she trapped his queen behind a lazy pawn, he leaned back, groaning. "You're reading my thoughts." "No," she said, resetting the board. "I'm reading your habits, your weaknesses you've never had to be uncomfortable." He stared, caught. She added softly, "I grew up uncomfortable. You grew up insulated. Big difference." And later that day, Ethan walked into a meeting where his head of communications laid a printed article in front of him. CEO mentors janitor for chess tournament, progressive leadership, or PR spin. Blurry photos from the cafe window below the headline. The room held its breath, waiting for his fury. He glanced at the paper, then simply said, "Good." When pressed on optics, he replied, "Let them talk. If they want to discuss power, class, second chances, even better." And outside that polished world, Danielle found a folded note in her locker. Block letters, no name. "Know your place." She crumpled it slowly, not in fear, but with the slow-burning fury of someone who'd been erased too many times to flinch. She arrived late to the rec center that night, the fluorescent lights buzzing above like a warning. The kids had already finished their tactics drills, laughter echoing faintly from the hallway as Coach Turner gave her a questioning look. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she replied too quickly, dropping her bag with a thud, eyes shadowed, breath shallow. During practice, her patience snapped. She barked at a boy for fumbling a knight, her voice sharp and foreign to her own ears. The child flinched, stunned, and Danielle froze, shame burning hot under her collar. After class, she sat in a corner of the gym, fists clenched against her knees, heart pounding beneath layers of pride and something heavier. Ethan showed up unannounced, his frame backlit against the double doors, but for once he said nothing. Just stood near the bleachers, watching the cracked gym floor reflect the hum of exhaustion. "You didn't show this morning," he said eventually, voice low. "I know," she answered without looking. "I waited an hour." "I know," she repeated, and he stepped closer, cautious. "Talk to me." She looked up, eyes blazing. "You don't get to ask for my voice when yours gets heard in every room before you even speak." He blinked. "What happened?" "I got a note," she snapped, then quieter. "Doesn't matter." "It does." She stood. "People don't like what they can't control. You're used to being liked. I'm used to being invisible. But right now I'm being noticed, and not for the right reasons." Ethan swallowed his reply, shoulders drawn tight. "I don't want to be your story," she continued, voice raw. "Your redemption arc, your PR miracle." "You're not." "Then why does it feel like I'm standing in your shadow every time I step into the light?" He softened. "Then step out," he said. "I'm not trying to fix you. I'm trying to get better because of you, not through you. You're not the footnote, I am." Her shoulders sagged, the fire in her eyes dimming to embers. "The tournament's in 3 weeks. I need space, focus." He nodded once. "Then I'll see you at the board." No more cafe. No more photos. She turned toward the exit. "If I win," she added, "I want you to clap like I'm a stranger." He smiled faintly. "And if you lose?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both knew she wouldn't. The tournament hall pulsed with quiet electricity, rows of folding tables stretching across the carpeted ballroom like a battlefield waiting to ignite. Danielle stood near the entrance, badge clipped to her plain navy blouse, fingers clenched around the strap of her bag like it was a shield, her sneakers scrubbed clean but still worn, her eyes sharp, steady. Across the room, Ethan appeared. Not in a suit, but in a hoodie and jeans, blending into the crowd like any other name on the roster. They didn't speak, just exchanged a nod that said everything. Her first opponent, a smug club player with too much cologne and not enough caution, smiled condescendingly as he extended a hand and opened with idle chatter. She dismantled him in 27 moves without saying a word. The second game was tighter, a young woman with speed and fury. But Danielle absorbed it, broke the tempo like a wave on rock, and watched her opponent's clock bleed dry. By the end of day one, she was undefeated, but the whispers returned, circling her like smoke. Isn't that the janitor from Veritas? She's not really self-made, you know. These stories always have backers. Danielle walked past without flinching, but every word sank like a stone. Ethan, seated at a far board, played his own matches, winning some, drawing others, but his focus never drifted far from her table. He wasn't here to win, he was here to witness. After her final match that evening, Danielle slipped into the lobby to breathe, only to find him waiting near a column, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. "You looked good in there," he said. She exhaled, felt tight. "You played like you'd already won. I played like I had something to lose." They stood in silence until she asked, "Why are you still here?" He hesitated, then answered quietly, "Because I think this might be the first time I've ever cared who wins, besides myself." She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. "Then clap loud tomorrow," she said, "loud enough to embarrass yourself." "I will," he promised, and for the first time, she believed him. Day two moved like a blade through cloth. Fast, silent, inevitable. Danielle's third-round opponent was a former collegiate champion with a smirk that curled like smoke and commentary that tried to unnerve. Remarks about her posture, her tempo, even her hair. She didn't flinch. By move 14, she'd sacrificed a bishop for a pawn that looked insignificant until it wasn't. By move 23, he saw the trap but too late. Her rook glided in like a whisper and ended it. "That's not check," he scoffed, but she met his eyes, calm as still water. "Look again." He looked, froze, then knocked over his king without another word. Outside the hall, the final list was posted. 4 semifinalists, and Danielle's name sat at the top like a quiet defiance carved in ink. Ethan made the cut too, barely. But they wouldn't face each other. Instead, their boards would sit side by side, 2 stories converging but never clashing. As she stared at the list, someone brushed past behind her, muttering just loud enough, "If she wins, it's because someone let her." But no one stayed long enough to claim the voice. She didn't chase it. She didn't need to. That night, sleep evaded her again. Not because of fear, but because of the question clawing inside her chest. Was she chasing a title or running from the ache of always being seen as less? At sunrise, she rose anyway, shoulders squared, heart armored, and walked back into the ballroom, where every square on the board was another way to say, "I deserve to be here." The final day cracked open with tension so thick it coated the air like humidity, the tournament hall glowing under fluorescent lights that buzzed like nerves. Danielle took her seat across from a man in a tailored gray suit, his handshake firm, smile practiced, eyes cold. He looked like he belonged at a hedge fund, not a chessboard. "Ready, Miss Carter?" he asked. She met his stare without blinking. "I've been ready." The clock started, and her hands moved like music, only she could hear. Sacrificing early, drawing him in, letting him believe he was dictating pace, while beneath the surface she was building rhythm, building war. 43 moves later, he leaned back in stunned silence. King tipped over as the room erupted in a ripple of disbelief. Danielle didn't flinch, didn't grin, just signed her score sheet and stood. Across the room, Ethan had just lost his match. But when their eyes met, his grin was wider than any victory he'd ever claimed. He clapped, once, twice, then louder, until the entire room followed, the applause thunderous, raw, real. Reporters swarmed, officials handed her a crystal plaque, but none of it mattered. She only looked at Ethan, who mouthed like a stranger. And in that moment, Danielle felt it, deep and true. Not like a pawn, not even a queen, but like the hand that moved the board. That evening, the banquet room was too warm, too bright, filled with tuxedos and champagne flutes, and people who said words like representation without understanding the cost. She stood near the edge of it all, untouched ginger ale in hand, staring at the plaque like it belonged to someone else. Ethan drifted close, murmured, "You okay?" And she whispered, "Why do I feel like I'm just a shinier pawn?" Before he could answer, the governor appeared, handshake outstretched, voice dripping campaign polish. "You've moved the whole state? Miss Carter, we'd love to build an initiative around your story." She stared at him and said evenly, "You mean you want to put me on a bus and parade my scars for photo ops?" He blinked. "You're exceptional." "I've always been exceptional," she replied. "You just noticed today." He excused himself. She turned to Ethan. "I want to leave. Let's walk." They slipped out the back, the trophy left behind, the city air crisp and honest as they wandered along the riverwalk, fairy lights trembling on the water. "You won," he said. "You changed the board." She exhaled. "Then why do I still feel like I have to prove I belong?" "Then make them listen," he said. "Do something they can't ignore." She stopped. "I want to run the youth chess program full time. No press, no headlines, just the work." He nodded without hesitation. "It's yours." They shook on it quietly without ceremony, and when she got home that night, she didn't open the plaque case. Instead, she placed a single black queen beside the old pawn on her coffee table. Two pieces that had carried her across the board, not to be admired, but to remind her. This wasn't the end game. It was just the beginning.